Om Shri Sai Ram. Offering my most humble and loving salutations at the lotus feet of our beloved Bhagavan, Sri Satya Sai Baba. A very warm Sai Ram to all the brothers and sisters watching this offering, his story through the eyes of his boys. And as we start our program with the prayer, I request you all to please join me and say the prayer along with me, please. O Lord, take my love and let it flow in fullness of devotion to Thee. O Lord, take my hands and let them work incessantly for Thee. O Lord, take my soul and let it be merged in one with Thee. O Lord, take my mind and thoughts and let them be in tune with Thee. O Lord, take my everything and let me be an instrument to work for Thee. Sai Ram, and welcome to next episode of his story through the eyes of his boys. Today also happens to be a very auspicious day of starting of Navaratri, or Dashera as we call it. This auspicious festival does bring a lot of nostalgic memories, because this was one of the major events or festivals which Bhagavan used to celebrate himself, promoting the Vedic culture, the Vedic messages, and the purpose of whole concept of life. On this auspicious occasion, it's a joy and a blessing to continue this divine saga. Today, I am joined by a brother of mine who comes from an army background, who grew up in an army environment, but his spiritual quest brought him to the Lord. So it's a journey we are going to witness today to see how Bhagavan transformed a person and gave a different perspective to live and understand. I have a pleasure to introduce and welcome Brother Gautam Datt. Sai Ram Gautam.
Sai Ram.
Welcome to this offering, his story through the eyes of his boys.
Thank you.
Let me take a quick moment to introduce you, just say a few words of introduction for you. Brother Gautam Datt today joins us from Oman. His journey started with Bhagavan officially as a student in 1983, when he joined the Prashantinilayam campus for his undergraduate studies, and then went on to do his master's in English. And later on, Bhagavan's direction, he taught for a few years at Vrindavan campus, English. And then as Bhagavan would will it, he has moved on to the Middle East. He was before in Abu Dhabi and then now in Oman. He works, he's at the Sultanate of Oman. He's a professor in English at the National University of Oman, College of Engineering. So with this short introduction, I welcome you again, Brother Gautam.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure to have you here. So Gautam, to start the program, let me request you to tell us something about your life before you came to Bhagavan and how he hooked you all into his fold.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to begin with a short prayer.
Sure.
Om Param Brahma Param Jyoti Paramatmane Sri 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 Satya Sai Bhagavan Namostute. offering my most humble and loving salutations at the divine lotus feet of our Lord and Master and Divine Mother, Bhagavan Sri Sathya Sai Baba. I would like to begin with offering greetings to all our brothers and Sai brothers and sisters all around the world who are watching this on this holy occasion of Dashera or the Navratras.
Gautam, if you can check your jack, there is some kind of a vibration coming up. So I'm just wanted to.
Okay, is it better now?
No, I think jack. Just check the jack once more. Some
Is it okay?
vibration is there. Yeah.
Is it okay now?
Yeah, there's some kind of vibration movement. I don't know why.
Okay. Maybe it's because of the AC. Should I shut it out? Should I shut it down?
Probably, I don't know. Because it's just sounding a little bit to vibrations kind of coming. I don't know. It wasn't there before. But anyway, please speak. No problem. Sorry about that.
No. So as I said, as I was continuing, thank you very much for inviting me and giving me this great opportunity to share the divine experiences and relive them. You were asking me about my life before Swami. My life before Swami was exactly the opposite of what it is now. Or exactly the opposite of when I met Bhagavan and came into his fold. So, number one, I was not a very spiritual or religious person. I was not anti-religion also. I was not an atheist, but at the same time, I was not overly religious. I think the only time I ever visited a temple was when my mother used to drag me on Tuesdays to the Hanuman temple, and I had to accompany her. So that was as far as it went. And I had a typical life of any teenager in a military environment. But because I was very fond of sports, so I had most of my time I spent in sports. So a lot of riding, a lot of swimming, a lot of athletics, games, tennis, golf, all these kind of things. So my father used to play golf, so I used to join him for golf and so on. So that was my life before I came to Swami. And as far as doing things like getting up in the morning and doing Suprabhatam, that was something I hardly ever did. And the thing, but I used to get up early in the morning, and that was because I was put in a hostel, a boarding school, somewhere in Himachal Pradesh, a place called Kasauli, and my school was the Lawrence School, Sanar, which has a military tradition. And recently it's going to celebrate its 175th anniversary. So it's a very old tradition, and it has a military background. Most of the people who come from that school, they join the military, join the armed forces. And I'm proud to say that most of the people who have achieved, things like Paramveer Chakra and so on. One of the most famous ones is Arun Khetrapal. He was from my school, and I still remember that we had to march every morning from our dormitories to our classes. And when we marched, there was this monument which was made to all these heroes, and we had to salute it as we marched past that. So that was my life before I actually came into Bhagavan's fold.
So you had a disciplined life in a way.
Yeah, well, yes, but with a difference. I mean, that was military discipline. Yeah, military discipline, force discipline. You had to do things, or you got punished. Basically, I remember there used to be a black book. If you're late for anything, for example, or you didn't do anything properly, you had what we call a ragda.
So then, so how did Swami get into your life then? What happened?
Yeah, that's a very interesting story. I think both my mother and me, we heard about Swami before we actually started attending bhajans. So I should say quite a few years before we started attending bhajans. My mother was there when Swami came to visit Punjab. She was in Chandigarh and she heard about it. And somebody also asked her, would you like to come along? And I think for some reason, maybe because she was alone, because my father was in the front. He was at the Chinese border in Ladakh. So most of his postings were in Kashmir and there, that place, and some others were in northeastern frontier area. So he used to hardly be at home as a child. I remember he used to just come and go. So my mother had to handle everything. So for some reason she couldn't go. And for me, again, I heard about Swami in a very, I should not say strange way, in a way when we were studying for our 10th board exams. And, we were all given special place dormitories with cabins so that we could study and do well in our exams. And one night when I was studying, I heard an argument, raised voices, and so on. We had a place where we could make coffee and tea and so on, so that it could help us to study in the night. But there was this argument going on in that area, and I was getting disturbed. And I went there and I saw two people. One was a Muslim boy, and the other was a South Indian student. And the South Indian student was Rao. He's in the US now. He was telling this Muslim boy that about Swami, about Sai Baba, who is an avatar, and he is a god in human form. And this boy, being from his own religious background, Muslim, said, "How can it be possible? No human being can be God," and so on. So this argument was going on. It was disturbing me. So I remember I walked all the way down to that place where they were arguing, and I wanted them to stop. So I told them, I said, "Look," I told Khan, I said, "You don't believe that Baba is God, right?" He said, "No." I said, "Fine. So you stay with that. You don't believe in him." And I told Rao, "You believe he's God, right?" He said, "Yes." "Fine. So that's your belief. So why don't you just, stop there and you continue believing what you continue believing, that Swami is not God, and I told Rao, I said, "You believe that Swami is God, so for you he's God. Okay, so let's stop it here because you're disturbing everybody." So that was my first. That was the first time I actually heard Swami's name physically. Okay, and later on, Swami, in his own way, he showed me that when I was in that school, he was always with me. As I say, around me, with me, but I didn't realize it. And I had some kind of experiences, but I never related them to Bhagavan. So that is the first time I heard about Swami.
Like what, if you want to little bit highlight that, what kind?
Actually, it's a very personal experience. So
Okay, no problem.
yeah.
So I guess maybe later on in life you could assess that, yeah, it was Swami hand there.
Yes, because he showed me. He showed me that it was him, in his own inimical way, as he has.
Sure.
Some things he tells you directly, some, but I never questioned it. But I'll tell you one thing. I was, like I said, I was not very spiritual, and I remember somebody giving me a book called Jonathan Livingston Seagull. One of my classmates, he gave me a book called Jonathan Livingston Seagull. He said it's a very good book and you should read it. So I read it. That book was very heavy for me. So, so you can imagine my level of spirituality at that particular period of time. So I was more into things like, whatever we had a lot of gymnastics and boxing and athletics. All this was compulsory for us. So I was much more into that. I loved sports, and that was the reason why I was put in that particular boarding school, because my mother couldn't keep up with my sports basically. So
I do remember your sporting activities in Puttaparthi. So we'll come to that. So let us hear now the first interaction of yours with Bhagavan.
Right. Well, first of all, I would say I should be grateful to my mother. All of us, all the when me and my father and my brother and we all talked, we realized now it was due to my mother that we came into Baba's fold. So my father at that particular point of time had been posted to Udhampur, place called Udhampur in Kashmir, which is the headquarters of the military. And just before we came, Swami had visited Kashmir. And he had stayed with General Malhotra, who is, as everybody knows, a very old devotee of Bhagavan.
Gautam, there's a lot of disturbance coming. I guess you may have to shut off AC or something. There is some wind sound comes very heavy.
Okay. So let me just give me a second.
Yeah, please, no problem. Sorry about that. Yeah. I guess it is better that we take care of the sound, otherwise, every time people will have some disturbance on that. Sorry about that. I think because otherwise this sound issue would have continued, and
Is
this
it better
sound
now?
issue would have continued. Yes, much clearer now. Thank
So
you.
it must be the AC. Yeah, it's a heavy duty AC. So
Okay, no, please carry on. So you're talking about General Malhotra, Swami's visit to Kashmir,
yeah,
and then
he was the army commander, and he was my father's boss actually. So when we came to Udhampur, there were this handful of family. There were about 3 or 4 families who were Swami's devotees, and they used to have bhajans and everything. And Mrs. Malhotra was an ardent devotee, and so was General Malhotra. Swami had stayed in his house also, stayed with him. So my mother came into contact with Mrs. Malhotra, obviously, and then she saw Swami's pictures. She got curious, and then Mrs. Malhotra like told her about Swami, and then my mother remembered how Swami had come to Chandigarh when she was there, and so on. Had come to Punjab, I think. He was there in Chandigarh also, if I'm not mistaken. And then she started attending bhajans because Miss Malhotra invited her to bhajan. So the first bhajan was in Miss Malhotra's house, and then slowly she became regular, the weekly bhajans, and so on. So she used to go ahead. But neither my father nor me and my brother, we were hardly involved at that stage of time. And then, as it happens with all devotees, a photo of Swami appeared near her bedside, and then yeah,
slowly, slowly,
slowly, yeah.
slowly entry happens.
Yes, and then she made a small puja place for Swami, in her own cupboard. I remember that. And then some kind of miracles started taking place, like Amrit started appearing in her picture, especially near her bedside. So these things happened. We didn't pay much attention to them. We respected it. We respected her whatever she was doing, but we were not involved. You know, we were like more like distant observers of what was going on, and we were busy with our own lives. So that was how it started. And then the time came for Swami's birthday, you know, and these few devotees, they decided to akhand bhajan on Swami's birthday. So there was 24-hour bhajan. My mother knew that none of us could sit there for 24 hours, obviously. So she wanted us to come for the last couple of hours, 1 or 2 hours. So when she told my father, he agreed, obviously. You know, he, in his own way, my father, very spiritual person, but very quietly spiritual. He doesn't make too much show about it. So he agreed, and of course, as the husband, he had no choice. So he had to go to his wife's request. So he agreed to go.
Oh.
My brother was too small to make any objections, so he was just told that you have to come. And as was his want those days, he said okay. And he had no choice. So the only problem was me because I was at that particular age where I could object. I was a teenager, and at this stage, I can tell you, everybody in my school believed that I was going to be a rock star because I was part of a band. I had started a band in school, and we used to play gigs, rock music and so on. Um, and so we were pretty famous. We even went to Kasoli, to play with the army functions there. Sometimes they would request our headmaster to send us, and you know, I can say that we were better than average.
Decent. Okay.
And we were very much into music. All of us in that band, we were very much into music. So I was a lot into music, and most of this music was rock music. Like if you entered my room, you would have these rock star pictures and rock music playing on my tape recorder. Those days we used to have cassettes, so I used to have a system. From time to time, I would listen. So all this
Walkman.
was, yeah. So when my mother decided to tell me about coming to Swami's birthday, I remember that time my room. I was in my room. It was morning time, and music was playing, loud music, rock music was playing. And she came into my room and she wanted to talk to me. So she asked me to reduce the volume. I did that, and then she said, "If I ask you something, will you promise to do it?" So I'm a teenager at that time, so I became alert immediately because she's asking for something and making me promise. That means it's something that I'm not going to like, obviously. So I told her, I said, unless you tell me what you're going to ask for, I can't promise you. So tell me what you want, then I'll think about giving my promise. And she said, no, no, just promise me that you'll do what I want. And very sweetly, the more sweet she became, the more suspicious I became. So I told her, I said, no, no, first you tell me. And then the ultimate blackmail was, you can't even do this small thing. You can't even promise your
For your
mother,
mother.
yeah, for your mother. But I was adamant. So finally, she gave in, and then she said, "Look, I want you to come for Swami's birthday. Bhajans are going on, and Akhand bhajans are there. But I don't want you to attend all the time. I just want you to come for the last 2 hours." So that kind of put me in a fix because I was sure I'm not going to enjoy bhajans and these kind of things. So I told her, I said, I literally, these are my words. And I didn't even say mother, I said, Mom, look at the kind of music I'm listening to, and you want me to come and attend bhajans and all this. How is it possible? I mean, I can't do that. And then she kind of pleaded with me and said, "You can't do this. Just once I'm asking you to come, and you can't do this little thing for your mother." So when she brought that emotional thing in, I had
So
to
you
say
said
yes.
okay.
So I had to say yes. But I had a, you know,
Condition.
yeah. I had. I told her. I said on one condition I will come. The car keys will be with me, and if I'm getting bored or I don't like it there, then I will come away. And she agreed to that. She said, "Okay, you can keep the car keys." But then I said, "How will you come back?" And she said, "Don't worry, we'll find somebody to drop us back. There'll be plenty of people there." And it was a small town; everybody knew everyone. And of course, a lot of people who are not the regular devotees also were coming for that.
Coming there. Mm.
So that was the condition, and I agreed to that. So on the day of November 23rd, we got ready, and we loaded ourselves. So my mother was already in the bhajan. So my father, me, and my brother, we loaded ourselves in the car, and we drove to there was one Colonel Ratan, Mrs. Ratan, whose children also joined Swami's college. All the three boys. They joined. In
Mm.
fact, I should say Swami was so gracious to all the families there in Udhampur who were Swami devotees, that all the children of all these families found their way into Swami's colleges. So there was another major, his daughters, both of them joined Swami's college in Anantapur and high school. And one of them, Soumya, is still there in Puttaparthi, and now she's looking after her mother also, who is quite old. She's also in Puttaparthi. So, and at one point, I still remember this thing when we were in holidays. Swami had taken us to Vrindavan, all of us, and he looked at all of us because all the boys were there. Me, my brother, and the three Ratan brothers were there, and he looked at all of us in a very very loving way, and he said, he leaned forward because I was the closest to him at that time, and he told me, almost in my ear, he said, "I love Udhampur, I love Udhampur, I love Udhampur." So, that was, I guess, a kind of,
I love Udhampur.
yeah, I love Udhampur, I love it. So,
Mm.
because of these families, they used to be really devoted and dedicated. We went to Colonel Ratan's house where the bhajan was being held. And I still remember the keys were given to me, the car keys were given to me, and we entered the bhajan hall. And this was the first time I was attending Swami's bhajan. So I saw all those. Swami's picture was there, but there were also lots of other pictures of gods and goddesses and sages and saints. Most of them I didn't know, except for a few who I had seen with my mother. Those are the ones which I knew. And of course, I knew Swami's picture. So I went and I sat there quietly. But I remember when I sat there, I was very conscious. Everybody was singing bhajans, and but I didn't sing because I was very conscious, and I felt that people are watching me, that kind of thing. I don't know. I had this kind of feeling. So I was sitting there quietly, and before I knew it, a great feeling of peace, as Christ once said, a peace that passeth understanding. A great feeling of peace descended on me, and I never experienced that feeling before. And when it descended on me, I forgot the time, I forgot everything. I didn't even hear the bhajans. I was just lost in that feeling. And before I knew it, bhajan got over. People were getting up. Yeah, bhajan got over. 2 hours, more than 2 hours, I think. More than 2 hours were over. And people were getting up for the aarti. They were standing up for the aarti. So, I woke up from my reverie, as I say, and I stood up with everybody else, and everybody sang the bhajan. And I was very quiet. The bhajans got over. Prasadam was distributed. Vibhuti prasadam was distributed, and then we all filed out to go home. My mother was very surprised that I was still there, but she didn't say anything at that particular point of time. I didn't speak to anybody. I didn't feel like speaking to anybody because I was totally lost I was in a totally different world. And we drove, everybody was talking in the car when we drove back home, but I was very quiet. And I went straight to my room after we retired. When we reached home, I went straight to my room. I didn't talk to anybody. Because like I said, it was the first time I had experienced that kind of feeling, and it was something which I can't even explain.
I think that was an induction program for you.
Yes, I think so. And the best part is, I used to go for riding morning and evening. So early morning and evening times, I would go riding. And Thursdays, I think it was evening time when I used to go for my ride. And I used to love horses. I used to love riding. So next Thursday, after the bhajans on Swami's birthday, next Thursday, I bathed and I got ready, and I was waiting for my mother to go for bhajan. So when my mother came out of her room to go for bhajan, I was waiting for her, and she was kind of shocked. I mean, literally shocked. And she said, she asked me, she said, didn't you go for your riding? And I said, no, I'm coming with you for bhajan. That almost floored her. So, but she didn't say anything. But I could see the surprise in her eyes. And it was so shocking for us that she didn't reply to that. And she said, okay. And we went, So it was just me and her, and we went for bhajan that day. And thereafter, every week, I joined her for bhajan. So that is how my journey, I should say.
So the hook happened through bhajan.
Yes.
The hooking happened.
Yeah, you can say that. Maybe that is the time that Swami chose.
So physically, when did you meet him? I think it was in Delhi, right?
Yes. Physically, I first met him in Delhi.
So how did that go? Just a quick story of that also will help.
That was a fantastic experience. When he came to Delhi, I was not supposed to go. So everybody in Udhampur came to know that, all these families, Swami's devotees, they came to know that Swami is coming to Delhi. And so they decided that they would go and have darshan. It was an opportunity. So they would travel from Kashmir down to Delhi. And Mrs. Malhotra also was going to accompany. So actually, it was most of the ladies. So my father and all the gents at that time, I think they were not free. They were busy. So it was only the ladies who decided that they would visit Delhi and
Yeah, it
have
was
Swami.
1980. 1980 Swami's visit to Delhi, Bhagwan's visit
Yeah.
Delhi. Hmm.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So I was not supposed to go. It was actually my brother who was supposed to accompany me because my brother was small and he was having holidays or something, and then or he could be easily taken out from school. And my mother wanted to take him because there would be nobody to look after him at home. So they decided to take my brother. So I was nowhere in the picture. But as those days in the railways, you had to book your tickets in advance, and so all the tickets were booked. Um, but something happened at the last minute. My brother could not go, and plans swiftly changed. And suddenly, I found that in the last week that I was on the list, and my brother was not. Um, I didn't know what to think about it because I would be the only male person accompanying the ladies, which was not something which I preferred. But uh, like they said, this we need somebody to run around to do things if anything is required. So you are the right person. So I was selected. So at the last minute, I substituted my brother. He stayed at home. I went with them, and we made this journey to Delhi for Swami's darshan. And all the ladies they did all the bhajans and all on the way. It was a memorable journey. And then we reached Delhi, and in Delhi we all separated. We all went to the places we were staying, but we were still in touch because the focal point was Mrs. Malhotra, who had all the contacts and things, and had made arrangements, wherever we could have Swami darshan and so on. So I remember the first darshan. We reached before Swami arrived in Delhi, and when Swami arrived that morning, he would go straight to Mr. Sohan Lal's house, who was a great devotee of Swami and old devotee of Swami. So Swami was staying with him. So he was supposed to go to Mr. Sohan Lal's house, and due to Mr. Malhotra being there, we also got the privilege of having Swami's darshan in Mr. Sohan Lal's house. So when we went there, we were given a place to sit in the garden. And I remember sitting in the garden. I got a place right in front, and beside me there was a group of monks, Buddhist monks, who were sitting right beside me. And that was the first glimpse I got of Swami. And then suddenly, as there were huge crowds outside Mr. Sonal's house, and then suddenly there was a ripple of movement, and somebody said, "Swami's come, Swami's come." So we all craned our necks and looked at the gate from where Swami was supposed to enter into Mr. Sonal's house. And at that time, I saw Swami for the first time. So the first thing I saw was the crown of hair because he was surrounded by people, and then slowly, his face came into view when people parted when he was moving. And the first thing that struck me was that he was short because when in his pictures, you look at his pictures, the face looks big, so you kind of picture him to be a little bigger than what he looks like. But his frame was very slight, and he was short. That was the first thing that struck me. And anyway, I watched him. He floated literally. He floated down on that pathway and entered Sonalji's house. And then we waited outside, and then after some time, he came out and he took a round, giving darshan to all the devotees. And he passed in front of me. Uh, he just gave me a glance. He didn't, specifically acknowledge me. He just gave me a glance, and he passed in front of me. But he talked to the monks who was sitting beside me. So he stopped there and he talked to them, and then he created vibhuti for them. I saw all this, but it never kind of made any impact. Like I was not like, oh, he created vibhuti or something like that. For me, it was very natural for him to do all that. So I didn't think too much about it. But what I was actually looking at was Swami himself. He looked so different from everybody. And then I heard him talking to these monks, and slowly he moved on. and back into the house. So the whole day till lunchtime we were sitting there, because from time to time Swami would come out and give darshan. He would stand in the back veranda of Swarnaji's house and look at everybody. And like that we passed the time until it was time for lunch, and then everybody dispersed because Swami would also retire. So we all dispersed. And then so that was my first glimpse of Bhagwan, you know. Uh, I think I was just like happy to have his darshan, and I didn't think much of it. I mean, I didn't have much time because we were moving a lot. So we rushed back home because then we had to have lunch and then come back for an evening session where Swami was going to give a discourse in Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan. So we were supposed to come back. So we rushed back to freshen up, have a lunch, and so on, and then get back to that place. Where again we had some passes, and all of us from Udom had some passes. So we were sitting in one particular row, which is right in the middle of the Bharatiya Vidya. So there, Swami was going to give a discourse, and most of the people who were attending there were like VIPs. This is what I came to know later. At that time, I didn't know what was going on. So I just accompanied all the people wherever they went. So that was my first glimpse of Bhagwan. And then in the evening, we went to Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan where Swami was going to give his discourse. And the moment Swami, we were in the middle, so the seating was rising up, you know, from the front row was at the bottom and the last row at the top. It was arranged in a stepwise. So I was somewhere, we were somewhere in the middle, and in that row where I was sitting, I was also somewhere in the middle next to my mother. My mother was on my left, I remember that, and my brother was on my right. So we were sitting like that. And then the moment Swami entered the hall, he turned right and walked up the steps. And he went right to the back. And, but when he came up, he stood where our row was. And he looked at all of us who were sitting there. And when he looked at us, I don't know what happened, because, again, after some time, my mother shook me and she said, Swami's on the stage. So then I realized, then I realized that when Swami came and stood there, I had actually bowed, I had put my hands together and I had bowed like this to him. And he stood there for a moment and a few minutes and then he left. But I was still like that. So until he went to the back and he went back down and then climbed onto the stage. And when he climbed onto the stage, that's when my mother realized, because everybody was watching Swami, at that time. So then my mother realized, okay, I was still in that position. And then she took me and said, okay, Swami is already on the stage. What are you doing? So I lifted my head, and that's the time I realized that without my knowledge, without consciously thinking about him, my hands had joined, my head had bowed, and I was in that position until he climbed onto the stage and sat in his chair. So this is something which I didn't do consciously; it just happened unconsciously. So these are things that were happening, and I was not used to them, because let me tell you, from the background I came for, I was a Punjabi boy, and very proud of myself and very egoistic. Let me believe me, very egoistic, and ready to fight at the drop of a hat, that kind of thing. You know how Punjabis are. Oi, all that. That type. So that was the environment. That's how we were, and especially from a military school. So there was no humility. But you see, this is where I think Swami's divinity, Swami's divinity shows that the soul responded to the divine soul, to the Paramatma, as I say. The Atma responded to the Paramatma. That ego and the body in the middle, they were totally nullified, when Swami's presence.
So that triggered your desire to talk to him?
Actually, Swami gave a discourse, and at that time I felt that evening that the whole discourse was for me, because Swami, he started by saying, this is what I tell my students, and he was talking about the 4 Fs: follow the master, fight the devil, fight to the end, and finish the game. And the whole thing, like, kind of related a lot to me, and I felt as if I was totally mesmerized, with Swami. And it was all new to me, the way Swami spoke, the way Swami put things so succinctly, so clearly, so simply, you know. So again, I didn't feel the time passed so quickly, and the discourse got over. Arthur was done. Swami left. Didn't feel that I was sitting there for such a long time, and then we went home. So that was the first day of Swami's visit to Delhi. That was the first glimpse and first experience. The next morning, we were supposed to go to another public gathering, which was in Talkatora Gardens. So there, all the public was allowed to come. So it was not like you have a special pass or not. Anybody who wanted to have Swami darshan. It was a huge place, and there were like thousands. I counted thousands. I can't tell you the kind of crowd that was there. Huge crowd. So the next morning we went for his darshan. My mother, again because of General Malhotra's wife and the ladies, they got a place to sit in front where Swami was going to address the public. But I was not able to get it. So I told my mother, I said, don't worry about me. I was given a place, but not right in front. I was somewhere, behind the first group of people who were sitting there after. So I was just sitting there. I was happy to just sit there, and I saw some people, from my school also, whom I never thought I'd see there. And of course, they were embarrassed to see me as I was embarrassed to see them. So we avoided each other. We actually avoided each other. So anyway, everybody was more interested in Swami. So we sat there in that. There was a huge tent, in which Swami was giving a shamiana, as they say, a big, really big one. And we were sitting there, and then somebody came and introduced Bhagavan, and then Swami got up to speak. I still remember that. So Swami got up to speak, and he said, he starts with this poem. So he started speaking, but there was no sound, and so somebody went running, and said, Swami, no sound. And then Swami checked the mic, the switch was off. So that gesture was so sweet, Swami's gesture, He put his head on the mic. There were two mics, so he put his head in the middle, and as if, oh, what a mistake I made. And then he switched it on and tested the mic. So all that I was watching, and until then, it was just an observation. As like everybody else, I was just observing having Swami's darshan. And then Swami started his poem. He sang his poem in Telugu, and there was a translator. So when he started his poem in Telugu, and as that poem progressed, I don't know what happened. The moment I heard him singing that, again, a very, very strong feeling rose in my heart. And that feeling was, this is the person I have been searching for all my life. I mean, again, it was not conscious. It just bubbled up from inside, from within me. And it was very strong that this is the person I was searching for all my life. And then I remember the moment that feeling came and it rose up, I thought to myself, and I made a kind of vow to myself. I never spoke this thing, but I made a vow to myself. I will not eat or drink anything until Swami speaks to me. And I remember I made that vow to myself, and after 5 minutes of making that vow, I got doubts myself, and I started thinking, the monkey mind, the ego. What will happen if Swami doesn't talk to you? Then what will happen? But anyway, the feeling was strong. The vow had been made. I didn't say this, tell this to anybody. I didn't say anything to anybody. Swami's discourse got over. Again, it was a very beautiful experience. And then we went back home in time for lunch. So lunchtime we were rushing around, so nobody noticed that I didn't eat or drink anything. So nobody said anything. But dinner time came, so we were staying with my father's aunt, who's both of them, uh, his aunt and her husband were doctors, very famous doctors in Delhi. So we were staying with them, and when everybody started eating and I was sitting on the dining table, they suddenly noticed that I wasn't eating. So my mother asked me, she said, "Why aren't you eating?" I said, "No, nothing. I don't feel hungry." But mothers, they can fathom out, they can feel out something is wrong somewhere. So my mother could sense that this is not something ordinary. So she kind of pestered me, and she said, "No, no, have something. Have something." Ultimately, my father's aunt also joined in, and then her husband also joined in, and then they had this old servant of theirs, who had been there for years, and he also was going to pour food into my plate. So ultimately, I had to say, "Look, I have
So
decided."
you have to disclose the fact.
Yeah, I had to disclose. I said, "Look, I have decided I am not going to eat or drink anything until Swami speaks to me." Then my mother started panicking. My aunt my father's aunt started saying, "What kind of nonsense is this? How can you decide like that, without knowing what is going to happen? I mean, even if you decide something like this, you should be practical about it. All those, everybody had their own opinion in this. And my mother was
Natural.
panicking. She said, and yeah, so she said, what will happen if Swami doesn't speak to you and leaves Delhi? So I looked at her and I said, then I won't eat and drink anything. So she was too shocked. She didn't know what to say to that, and the rest of the dinner was eaten very quietly by everybody. Uh, but this is what I was thinking later on, that none of us had thought that, okay, if Swami doesn't speak to me, then I can go to Puttaparthi after that. Why why does it have to be? But nobody thought about that. So because the tickets were booked to go back to Udhampur. So obviously change of plan is going to be difficult. So everybody was thinking about that, and everybody was focusing on the fact that in Delhi, Swami had to speak to me in Delhi. But anyway, that was the thing. So after that, I stopped eating. So we went every day wherever Swami gave darshans in the morning and in the evening we went. And I think
How many days?
2 days passed.
2 days. Okay,
And
2 days.
I remember on the third day, my mother took me. To that very famous chart place. There was a place in Delhi where one of the most famous charts were available. That
Yeah,
was like one of
IPSC, where he
yeah,
comes with a car to sell it. Yeah, it's a very
yes.
popular joint in Delhi.
When we went those days, he used to come on a motorcycle. First, he used to come on a cycle, then on a
Yeah,
motorcycle. Then later on, he started coming in a car. So all the government offices were there, and he would come, and everything would disappear within an hour. Everything would
yeah.
be gone. So it was very tasty. So my mother knew that I liked it. So it just happened that on that day, Swami Darshan was nearby. So after Darshan, we were going home. And she said, let's have chaat. So she wanted to entice me because she was really worried. I was not eating and drinking anything. And she was keeping a very close eye on me. So she took me there and she said, she ordered chaat and she asked me whether I would have. My favorite chaat used to be dahi papri chaat. She said, why don't you order a dahi papri chaat? And I said, you know that I have decided I'm not going to eat. So she tried to tempt me, but somehow it didn't work. And I was really determined. So she didn't. She left it at that. And then that day also got over. And then in the evening again, we were sitting at the dining table because I was supposed to sit with everybody on the dining table because that's where everybody gathered together. So I was sitting at the dining table, and again, my aunt and all were, my father's aunt and all, they were saying, why don't you eat and all that. It's, every day,
Those in a way.
every day it was like that. So when I was sitting there at the table and everybody had started dinner, I heard Swami's voice very clearly. And he said to me, he said, I'm going to talk to you tomorrow, eat your dinner. So So I heard this voice, and after that I just reached out for some vegetables, and I started putting the vegetables in my plate. I remember that. So now everybody was shocked because you know I started putting food in my plate, and my mother immediately looked at me and said, "Are you eating?" I said, "Yes." But what about your vow and all that? And I said, and I told her, I said, "Don't worry, Swami will speak to us tomorrow." And she said, "How do you know? All that." I didn't tell her what I had experienced, but I just said, "No, I just feel that Swami will speak to us tomorrow," or something like that. And I ate my dinner quietly, and everybody was very shocked. Now it was the opposite. Now everybody was thinking, kya kar diya isne, he had, he had made a vow, and now he's breaking that, and that kind of thing. Anyway, I had my dinner, and we went to bed. Morning we got off the Suprabhatam. The moment Suprabhatam got over, we did our Suprabhatam. The moment it got over, the phone rang, and it was Mrs. Malhotra. And she said, "Look, Swami is coming to Colonel Berry's house, and you can come with me when I go there, and Swami will be coming there, and you can have his close darshan." So that was the phone call right there early in the morning at 5 o'clock. So we were all very happy, you know. We had our breakfast, and then Swami was going to inaugurate the school that morning, Satyasai School, which was being inaugurated.
Kalkaji, New Delhi.
Yes. And that was a beautiful function, there was Vedam, and the Pandits were there, and Swami created the diamond necklaces for him and his wife. And then, so they had kept Swami's pictures, big pictures framed for Swami to bless. And there were a lot of them, a lot of pictures, let's say about 20, 30 of them, and they were big in size. They were kept arranged like that, and Swami walked between them. And he clouds of vibhuti. He showered clouds of vibhuti on these pictures, blessing them.
Beautiful.
Yeah, that was the inauguration, and then Swami gave his discourse. And I had been told that you should you should be seated near a place where you can exit quickly, because again, huge crowds. When Swami leaves, it's almost impossible to get out. So you have to be out very quickly, so that you could beat the crowds and then reach Colonel Berry's house before Swami leaves.
Yeah.
So, I was sitting near the edge somewhere. And then as soon as Swami's discourse got over, somebody parted the flap which was nearby and said, "Shh," very quietly. It was supposed to be a secret that he's coming to come, but nobody should know. So, "Shh, come," and then I slipped through that tent flap. I literally crawled out. And then we ran to the waiting cars, and we rushed to Colonel Berry's house. And we reached there. And imagine my shock, because this is my first experience with Swami. I thought it was secret, but when I reached Colonel Berry's house, there were huge crowds. My God, the amount of crowds waiting already for Swami was. And I thought in my mind, what kind of secret is this? Everybody knows they're all here. So, anyway, we went and we sat in Colonel Berry's drawing room. So as usual, I sat at the back. I was like one of the last row. I sat down. I had some stuff with me which I was carrying. So I sat there. And then we were waiting for Swami. And Colonel Berry's drawing room had a big glass door, which had been opened so that the crowds can have darshan of Swami.
You can see from outside.
Can see from outside. And Swami's chair was placed near that. So that was the position, and we sat there. Then just before Swami came, Colonel Berry, came in front and told everybody who was there in the drawing room, gents on one side, ladies on one side. He said, "I request you, when Swami will come, you will sit here, and then he will come and talk to the family inside." So when Swami goes inside and looks at the house and all that, at that time he requested everybody, please go out into the garden, because you already had darshan. You can go out into the garden so that Swami can spend time with the family. This is what he said. So I heard that. And then Swami came. So Swami came, and he came with a few students, I still remember. Uh, and Swami students sat in the front row, and Swami sat in his chair. And he looked at everybody quietly. For some time, he spoke to Colonel Berry and his family members quietly. Some something. How are you? How is everything? Then he himself said. He said, "Show me the house." Swami said, "Show me the house." So Colonel Berry took Swami inside, and all his family members they went inside. His wife, his son, daughter, they all went inside. So now Colonel Berry had said, once you have
Once
had
he
this.
goes inside, you have to leave.
So I very sincerely I got up and I went and I stood in the garden. And it didn't strike me that I was the only one who got up and stood in the garden. Because nobody was ready to leave. Swami is there. Who want to leave? But as very sincerely, for some reason, I followed his advice. I went and I stood in the garden. And then I got busy because there were these people outside his compound wall, and they were trying to tell me to take the letters, take the letters and give it to Swami. And I was trying to ignore them, and they were, constantly calling me. So that thing was going on, and in that meantime, Swami finished talking to the family and looked and seen the house inside, whatever he was there. And he came out again, and he sat in his chair. So now, when Swami sat in his chair, I stood outside in the garden, outside those glass doors, with my hands folded. I was standing there, and I was the only one standing there. So Swami looked at me. He looked outside. He looked at me. He didn't say anything, and then he looked at the crowd inside. Then after some time, he looked at me again, and he wasn't speaking to anybody at that time. And then third time, he looked at me and he said, "Boy, come inside." So now I went, through those glass doors where Swami was sitting, and Swami told me, "Sit in front." He made the students clear the space for me, and he said, "Sit here." So Swami spoke to me. The vow was completed. As he said, "I will speak to you tomorrow." He spoke to me, and then he made me sit in front. And when he made me sit in front, this was an opportunity for me. So for some reason, I wanted to, find out whether Swami is really God or not. Look at my ignorance at that time. So as if I could find out whether Swami is God. But that was my frame of mind at that time. So, and I had the feeling that, I can find this out by looking into his eyes. I don't know why. That was the one time, and I think the only time in my life that I locked eyes with someone. After that, even if I tried it, it would be difficult. I would never dare to. But that time I did, and Swami allowed me to do that. So I looked straight. I was sitting in front, down, and Swami looking down at me, and I think he wanted to give me that opportunity. So I looked straight into his eyes for a good 5 minutes, trying to discover if Swami is God or not. And today when I think about that, I'm overcome. Every time I think about it, I literally cry because I have never had such a beautiful experience. I looked into Swami's eyes; they were very deep. I mean, it was as if you could walk right into them, and they were full of love and compassion. I never experienced that. And after about the time, this about almost about 5 minutes, I decided, or my mind decided, or my ego decided, yeah, he's God. So then I broke the contact, and Swami looked away, and looked around, and then because this is what the experience was with me. So he let me, I think, absorb whatever I had experienced. And after a few minutes, he told me, he said, "Get up and go back and sit where you were sitting before," which was right at the back. So I got up and I went and I sat at the back where I was sitting.
It is so nice to hear how Bhagavan really pulls people to his fold. And he has got his unique ways of attracting people and doing things. Gautam, I had heard something about the postcard. You remember signature has appeared, something like that? Can you?
No, but let me complete this Colonel Berry's thing. It didn't get
Oh,
over.
sure. Huh.
So after Swami sat for some time, then he made Colonel Berry announce that Swami is now going to leave. But before he leaves, he will give namaskar to everybody. So Swami stood there patiently, and each and everybody got up and did namaskar to Swami. I was the last one, and I had a lot of stuff with me. I was carrying it around because many people had told me if you get an opportunity, you get it blessed with Swami. So I had Swami's pictures, I had some books. So I was carrying this, and I was Man of Miracles was there. I still remember with me, and some other books. So when I went for darshan for Swami's namaskar, he was standing there. I was the last one. I had this stuff with me. So before taking namaskar, I put all these things down on the floor, and one by one I lifted them, and I told Swami, this is for so and so. Please bless it. And Swami blessed it. And this picture is for so and so. This book is for so and so. So there all the things, and he very patiently he blessed it, all of that. And then finally, when everything got over, I took namaskar, and I took first namaskar of mine, long namaskar, and then when I finished, then Swami moved. So that was the experience I had in Colonel Berry. Such a beautiful experience.
So your promise that I will not eat also succeeded. His talking, he also succeeded. So he fulfilled all the things.
I can only say that Bhagavan was so kind, so kind.
Nice, very nice.
Yeah.
So you want to tell me about that story about that postcard? The pocket calendar or something.
So that was an experience I had in Udhampur. So a lot of holy people used to come, and they would stay with Mrs. Ratan. So she would put them up in Swami's puja room, and I met some really great souls there. So there was one gentleman from the south. He was on his way to Amarnath, and he had stopped in Mrs. Ratan's house. And she asked my mother, she said, why don't you come and meet him? So my mother could not go at that time. She sent me. Because most of the time she was worried about me and my brother. So I went to see this gentleman. Mr. Ratan said, okay, no problem. You send him. So I went there. And I remember this gentleman. The first thing that I saw, he was sitting on the floor in their drawing room. And when I entered the room where he was sitting, I felt a sudden surge of happiness the moment I entered the room. Suddenly I became happy, very happy when I entered the room. That was the power of his vibration. So when I entered the room, I got this happiness, and then I sat on the sofa because I didn't know anything any better. And I remember this gentleman, he was sitting on the floor, and I sat on the sofa, and he looked directly into my eyes, and he said, sit down. Usually I would have listened. I would have said, who are you, and so on. But there was so much of power in those eyes. I quietly got off the sofa and I sat down in front of him. And then he told Mrs. Ratan something about me, and of course about their third sons also who were there. And I was surprised because he told her to tell my mother and so on. And he told things which only I knew. Some of the things only I knew. And then I looked at him in surprise, and he looked at me and he said, "Sab tumhare mathe pe likha hai." Don't look so surprised. He said, everything is written on your forehead. So that was the experience I had. And then he created. He didn't. Sorry, not created. He took out one from his Japmala. He took out the Rudraksh, and he told. He gave it to me, and he told me that you should wear it around your neck. And he told Mr. Ratan, tell his mother that he should always wear it around his neck. It's good for him. It will protect him. I had a lot of things around my neck. There were like so many tabis and so many things. My mother had, wherever she went, one thing used to be there. So when I met Swami in Puttaparthi in the first interview, Swami looked at me and said, "ये क्या बाजार लगा के रखा हुआ है यहाँ पे?" What is this marketplace? And he told me to remove everything except that Rudraksh. I still remember that. He didn't tell me to do that. So that was the experience I had with the gentleman. And then we went back home. So my mother wanted to know what that gentleman had told Mr. Ratan. So she came after some days. She came. We all went to Mr. Ratan's house again. And when we went there, we were sitting in a drawing room again and talking. And Mrs. Ratan brought one postcard size picture of Swami. Swami is wearing a yellow robe, looked very beautiful. And she gave it to me, and like a pocket calendar, and she gave it to me and said, "This is for you." But behind that, there was no calendar. There was one saying of Bhagavan. I didn't see it at that time. I took the calendar, I saw the picture, and I put it in my pocket. And then they were continuing talking. So, I was sitting there doing nothing. So, I wanted to see what she had given me. So, I took it out of my pocket and I looked at it, and then I turned it around, and there was this message, and there was a question in my mind at that point of time, and that message was an answer to my question. And what was written there was, God is like a postman. He only delivers the letter, he doesn't know the contents of the letter. And that was the answer to my question. Because if God is omniscient, and he knows everything and he does everything and he controls everything, how come people are suffering? How come? So that was the answer to that. That God is only a postman. He doesn't know the contents. And of course, at that time, I had not realized the depth of that particular thing which was written there. But it answered my question to a great extent. So I turned it back again to look at Swami's picture. And as I was looking at Swami's picture, I suddenly realized that in the right bottom corner, something was becoming, what should I say? Some writing was becoming visible. It was like it was growing. It was becoming clearer and clearer. So I shouted out immediately, "Look what is happening." So everybody rushed there, and then everybody saw. So some writing was becoming, first it was faint, and then it became clearer and clearer and clearer, and it grew. It literally grew out of the picture in the corner. And then finally, when it appeared completely, it was written with blessings, Bhagavan Sri Satya Sai Baba. Now, physically, if somebody was to write in that small corner, it would be almost impossible. So, and everybody saw this when it happened. So I remember Mrs. Ratan told me, if I had known that this would happen, I'd never given this picture. I would have kept it myself. Yeah, but it was very exciting, and there was something else with it. There was a kind of divine energy. The whole environment changed, the atmosphere changed, and everybody got charged when they saw this.
Okay, keeping the time, let me fast forward your journey now. Yeah. You're becoming a student. So let us come to, So let us do a little bit of fast forward and bring you there to Puttaparthi life. So how did that journey of becoming a student happen?
Swami, I think Swami prepared me. So what he did was, I started attending bhajans, and then slowly, a kind of routine started developing. I started getting up in the morning, doing the Omkaram, doing Suprabhatam, and then slowly some puja got added to it, and then meditation got added. I used to do yoga because I was a sports person. So I had one person who taught me yoga. So I was already doing that, but it was for the purpose of sports. So, but now that became a spiritual exercise, and I had some experiences there also, which I will maybe relate at a different time. All this started. So I started getting up at 2:30 in the morning, doing all my spiritual routine, my puja, my meditation, and then I would meditate in the evening. So I still remember meditating in the morning in those cold winter mornings in Kashmir. I would get up in the morning and blanket around me. It was very cold. Everybody's sleeping, I used to get up and do this meditation, and half the time I was dozing. I still remember that. So we started like that, and then slowly. So Swami was actually preparing me, I guess. I don't know, making me, you know. I don't know. I should say pure, because I was not very much into all this before. So he was actually preparing me and maybe preparing my mind. I started reading Swami's books, and of course I went for bhajans, and we started doing a lot of seva, and we had some lovely experiences of Swami there also. So this was happening, and then for some reason nobody knew that Swami had a university and a school in Udhampur. So all these people, they only at that time they thought that Swami had a Ved Pathshala. So I was very much into Vedas. I wanted to learn Vedas, So there was a desire in me to learn Vedas, and Swami would appear in my dreams and he would give me talks about Vedas. So I was very much into that. So when I heard about it, I said, okay. I talked to my mother and I said, I want to go and join Swami's Ved Pathshala. So that's what everybody thought. Nobody knew. Literally nobody knew, and nobody knew how to get there. Also, how to get to Puttaparthi. Nobody knew that. And then my mother spoke to Mrs. Malhotra, and Mrs. Malhotra then said, okay, Swami's university is there. So she brought the form, that application, and gave it to my mother, who filled it and sent it to Puttaparthi. But we didn't get any reply. So time was coming close, and then we didn't get a reply about it. So my mother wrote a letter to Kasturi. How to get a reply? So she wrote to the university also, but again there was no reply. So she wrote to Kasturi. Somewhere she found Kasturi's address, and she wrote to Kasturi that this is what happened. We applied for my son, and no reply came, and we are waiting. And please advise us what to do. So that letter went, and and we actually got a reply. So when the reply came, it was the same letter, but on top, a remark was written there in Swami's handwriting. We didn't know it was Swami's handwriting at that time. We thought it was Kasturi's writing. So it was written there, please send your son immediately to Puttaparthi to join the college. So there it was. So my mother said, see, now we must go. And I was in the middle of my exams when I asked my father. I said, my father had to say yes. So we all, I went to my father. My mother also said that, he wants to go to Puttaparthi. He said, no, you can't go in the middle of your exams. What will happen? You will waste a year and so on. And at that time, the undergraduation there was for 2 years. So it was an advantage for me. I was already having an advantage, and he didn't want me to lose out on it. And I was studying science. I still remember physics, chemistry, math. And so she said, you can't go. So then we tried to persuade him. He didn't budge. And then we suggested something to him. We said, okay, we'll take chits. As devotees, we'll take out chits. Swami says, yes, we'll go. He said, no, I'm not going to do all this. What is right is right. What is wrong is wrong. This is not the time for you to go. You cannot go. We'll see another time. That was it. So I think my mother might have prayed to Swami. I don't know. Suddenly, in a day or two, an official notice comes. There was some local election suddenly took place. I don't know. There was a sudden unasked for election, and my college became the center for that election. And because of that,
election.
they had to do the poll booths and all that was done in the college. A lot of these youths, they were into politics. They were supporting parties and all. So the election was supposed to take place in my college. The college shut down for 10 to 15 days. So then when this news came, then I went to my father again, and both me and my mother, we told him, see, now it's closed. Now what do you say? So the timing was perfect. So he couldn't say no. So tickets were booked, and we left for Puttaparthi. Now I reached Puttaparthi 1 day before the exam, entrance exam. I have not filed any application. I have not done anything. We reached 1 day before. We went straight to registrar's office at block, I still remember, and we met him. And he said, madam, it's impossible. You can't. We have not applied. The date is over. We cannot allow all this kind of things. This is not some XYZ college. This is Swami's college. Then my mother took out a letter and she said, "See, it's written here that please send your son immediately. And we asked you so many times for a reply. You never gave a reply. And now this letter came, and that's why we came." So when he saw the letter, he recognized Swami's handwriting.
Okay, he recognized.
Yeah. So the moment he read that, he looked at my mother and said, "How long have you known Swami?" My mother said, "I just met him recently in Delhi, and we are all devotees and all that. We just became devotees." She started off the whole. So he was surprised, and then I was surprised because then he said, because until then he was saying there's no way I can admit your son, and no way he can apply. You come next year or something. Suddenly he changed. He said, "Okay, we'll do one thing. I'll give you the application. Let him sit down here and fill the application, complete it, and give it to me now only, and he can give the exam tomorrow." And he asked me, "Are you ready to give the exam tomorrow?" I said, "Yes." So I actually sat in his office and I filled that application form. And I remember bugging him also because there was I had to give a write-up about why I want to join Swami's college or something. And I asked him, I said, "What should I write?" And he was very busy, and he looked at me very irritated. And he said, "Whatever you think, you write."
If you know the registrar before, you would not have asked him that question.
I would not have asked him. So I wrote something and I filled that form, and we signed it and we gave it to him. Next morning was the exam. So that's what happened. So next morning when I went for the exam in the college, I saw Swami students. They had also come to give the exam, entrance exam. I think they were from high school, so they were transferring to the college, and they were giving the exam. And they looked so smart. They were like bright, shining faces, white and white, and they came in a very disciplined way. And they were totally different from anybody I had met. So I looked at them and I said to myself, "Beta Gautam, you will never get admission into this college. There is no way you can be like them." I was thinking to myself. Anyway, so I sat for the exam and I gave the exam, and then I had to get back. So my mother and my brother stayed back, because he had to also give the entrance exam for the high school. And there was still time for the high school exam. So I left. I went back to Udhampur. And then after a few days when the results were declared, they went and so my name was the last one on the list. And they immediately sent a telegram. Those days, telegram, and then otherwise you had to make trunk calls, and it was difficult. So they sent a telegram, "Come immediately, get your bag and baggage. You've been selected, join Swami's college." And again, my father was upset because it was again in the middle of the college year. He said, "No, wait and complete this thing." So I said, then my mother called up and told him, "Look, this is Swami's college, it's Swami's blessing. We should not, you should be here on the first day. Swami will give a discourse, you should be there, all that." So I left my college without completing the graduation there, because I think the last two exams were there. I just left it and I came to Swami's college. And believe me, you know what? How can I describe? I had this wonderful idea again. I was full of these ignorant ideas that I wanted to join Swami's college 5 years. So I was very happy that I joined as an undergraduate. And I thought that in 5 years of studying in Swami's college, at the end of 5 years, I will get moksha.
So you had that mind, huh?
Yeah, that very very funny ideas. We get all these funny ideas. So that's how I came to Puttaparthi.
Excellent.
And
Gautam, let me quickly look at you this way. So, when you joined Hostel, I'm sure you had a hostel life before also. So, how would you describe that era in comparison from a previous life hostel to this hostel and the life of the whole, you know?
first of all, the advice given to me by my parents was very different. When I joined that hostel, they told me, "See, if you miss us or you know don't cry and all that, this is for your benefit." All this. When I was joining Swami's college, they said, "You are blessed. You are very lucky to join Swami's college. You got a seat in Swami's college. So don't, you know,
Cry.
no, don't spoil it. Be very careful to follow all the discipline, to follow everything, and don't do anything bad or anything wrong." So this was the advice. And then when I entered the hostel, somebody saw me carrying my bag and baggage, and they said, "Brother, Sai Ram brother, do you need any help?" And he took my luggage. I have seen a lot of hostels. Nobody says, "Sai Ram brother, let me help you with the luggage." Mostly it'll be the other way around. You carry my luggage. And you,
Yeah, that's a very unique welcome which all get.
yeah,
I
you
had
get ragged. I was
Rajkumar
ragged.
Jain, my senior, pick up my bag and took me to my room. So
Let
I
me tell
recall
you, in
that.
the hostel which I joined in Lawrence Wood, Sanawa, there were you were made to do things by your seniors. Somebody had to polish shoes. Somebody had to make their bed. Somebody had to bring food stuff for them. These kind of things. But here, somebody was telling me to go ahead and I will help you. And so he took me to my room, and he happened to be in the same room. So he took me to my cupboard, I remember, and he said, "There it is." And then
So
my
you
mother and
remember
I, yeah,
darshan in those days of darshan, if you
oh,
recall darshan of those days?
those days darshan was very different, very beautiful. We didn't have lines, number one, and whenever we were free, we could go to the we could go to the mandir. And many of us used to sit near the outside wall of the mandir. Sands were there, and we used to sit near the outside wall because Swami would appear on top. So you might get a glimpse of him. So many people, we would take our study books and we would sit there, and we would, wait for Swami's glimpse and do our studies in the same. So if you didn't have classes, for example, you didn't have to stay in the college. You could either go to the hostel or you could go to the mandir. Many people, for example, in the afternoon when they didn't have classes, we would go and quickly have a bath and go to the mandir and sit down in the veranda. So we had all
That's
the
very
freedom. And
interesting because 83 we joined, and that, of course, that time the whole discipline had changed. We couldn't go to mandir, but at your time, you could just go to mandir whenever you have free time.
yeah, because still students were doing a lot of work. They used to work in the copium, they used to work in the zoo, they used to do door duty with Swami, and they used to carry Swami's handkerchief when he went for darshan and things like that. So students used to do a lot of things. And I remember Swami gave me, called us, during the first few days, one morning when everybody was still in the college. He sent word to warden to send a group of us, and when we went there, he gave us these Sevadal scars, orange scars. I think you have a photo of mine, which I sent
Yes,
you.
yes, yes. I think we should
So
show it. Yeah.
he gave some of us these scars, and he said, he gave us a talk about the kind of duties that Sevadal should do, and then he said, wherever I go, you have to come with me. So that was, the job description given to us. We had to accompany Swami wherever he went. So sometimes Swami would go in the day, sometimes Swami would go in the evening. Whenever he went, if we were in the college, for example, Swami's jeep would come, and Swami's driver would come, and then he would tell the principal that we want those boys, and then we would all pile into the jeep very happily and accompany Swami. So the jeep would be in front, we would sit at the back, we could see
So
Swami in the
nice.
car. Yeah, it used to be a wonderful, wonderful time that we spent, and what opportunity to go with Swami wherever he went. That was amazing. So,
So
all
that was
that.
a nice thing. So Swami had inducted you for a escort duty kind of a thing. Wherever he
Yes, yes,
goes,
yes. That
you
is it.
go
And
with
not only
him.
me, there were other people, as you can see in the picture, there were a lot of other people. So a group of us whom Swami had selected. So that was a wonderful opportunity, and the experience. Everybody's studying in college, everybody's in class, so you have the privilege of running out, getting into the jeep, going with Swami, having and then spending the whole day. I mean, literally, it would be till afternoon or evening before Swami got back, and it would take at least 2-3 hours. So
in those days, in those days, did Swami come to the school, college, and classrooms and all that for you people also?
Those days, number one, we never locked our cupboards because Swami could come anytime to the hostel, even when we were not there, and he would open anybody's cupboard. So nobody locked their cupboard because anytime Swami would come and open it. And of course, everybody wanted Swami to open their cupboard, right? Who would not want? So cupboards were left unlocked, and gates were always kept open until Swami retired in the mandir. When news came that Swami is retired for the day, then only the gates were closed. So at any time, Swami could enter anywhere. He could go to the primary school, he could go to the high school, he could go to the college. And when he came to the college, he could enter any classroom. He would go wherever he felt like. He would just enter the classroom, he would sit at the back, he would listen to a lecture. Sometimes he would ask questions to the teacher, sometimes he would ask questions to the students, sometimes he would tell something that the teacher was explaining, he would expand on that. I mean, it was very beautiful. It was an amazing time.
I wish I was there a few years earlier.
We used to look forward to that. And we used to do, I remember I joined the maintenance department. So when there were festival and all, we used to work all night. And Swami's coming to college. We would work all night and then, prepare everything. And then Swami would come the next day.
So which department of self-reliance, as we call it later on, were you involved with?
The maintenance, like I said, maintenance, electrical and maintenance.
Electrical maintenance.
Yeah. So we looked after everything, all the electrical and the maintenance, plumbing, generators, those kind of things, sound systems, all these things.
Any memories of engagement with Bhagavan in those days?
Constant. And Swami would spend the maximum time with his students, and this is, I think, it was a privilege that we had, and it was also sometimes a complaint by devotees that Swami would spend too much time with us and not enough time with them. Swami, he would spend maximum time with students. Like if the darshan got over, Swami would finish an interview, come out and spend time with students. Sundays he would spend time with students. Holidays, we never went for holidays because Swami would spend more time because fewer students would be there. Many people would leave for home. So we would stay back so that we could spend more time with Swami. And of course, for me, Swami never, me and my brother, Swami never let us leave because I remember first time I got up to say that I'm going home, Swami, for holiday. It was no one was good. Shut up and sit down. He didn't. Then he told warden. He said, "Let him stay here." So we stayed in the mandir. Remember, in the old hostel. And it was a very difficult time because those days Swami used to be very, very strict. We had to walk. When we walked, Swami used to tell us constantly.
Just hold your microphone because there's a cut sound coming. I don't know why. As if somebody's fan or typing. I don't know what's happening.
Must be maybe the fan. You want me to shut it down again?
Maybe the fan is making that noise. Yes.
Is that clear now or still?
No, it keeps coming and going.
Okay, just give me a second.
Yeah. Let me show them. In the meantime, let me show the pictures to people. It is. Yeah.
I'm so sorry about that. Yeah.
No problem.
Yeah. Okay. So where was I? I was.
Interaction with Swami we're talking about. Yes.
Yes. So he would. So we would not go home. So I was saying that I remember the first year. We were staying back in the old hostel. Not the first year, but second year also. We were staying back in the old hostel. It was very difficult. Swami used to be very strict with us. So we were supposed to, and he would remind us. We were supposed to walk with looking down at our toes and not look up. So when we went for lunch to the canteen, we didn't look up. If somebody saw us looking and they told Swami, we would get it left and right. Even when if Swami was not in Puttaparthi also, he would send word that this person is not behaving himself, and he would give a lambasting somewhere. So it was very difficult to stay there at that time. And the other thing was we were not supposed to say Sai Ram. Swami used to say, don't disturb anybody because they might be taking God's name. And when you say Sai Ram, they have to stop and they have to respond to you. So don't do that. Don't say Sai Ram to anybody. Just look down, walk to where you have to go. And then Kutumrauji used to come and remind us all the time, that it is better to
Just
lie down.
come back again. That line you said that he asked you not to say Sai Ram to people.
Yeah, he used to say, don't say Sai Ram to anyone. When you are walking, don't say Sai Ram. Don't greet anybody with Sai Ram because.
Or just like, okay, we have a habit of greeting everybody whom passes by.
Yeah.
Okay. That way. Okay.
Elderly gentleman coming and say Sai Ram. So the Swami used to say that he may be taking God's name and he has to stop and then he has to respond to you. So don't disturb anybody. Go to whatever job you have to do, go and do it and come back quietly. That's it. And Kutumrauji used to come and remind us when Swami is not there. Twice a week he used to come and tell us. They say it's better to lie down on your mat and cover your face with a sheet, but you should not be found wandering anywhere. So we never. So I never went to the bakery. I never went to any ice cream parlor. I never went to all these pizza and all which they used to get in the darshan and the ashram. The only time I would get out of the old hostel was when I had to go for lunch and when I had to go for dinner. So go to canteen, eat your lunch, come back, and then go for dinner to the canteen and come back. That's it. And no foreigner canteen, by the way. It was only the South Indian canteen. North Indian canteen was not there. And the only advantage we had was we could sleep in the mandir. So we used to, at evening time, we used to roll up our, mats, and then we used to go and sit down in the mandir and sleep there. And that was again.
I think it's nice for people who have not been exposed to Bhagavan in that way to know how strict he could be.
Oh, he used to be very, very strict. And he used to constantly remind us, he said, people are watching you with 1,000 eyes. So don't look left and right. When Swami was, for example, when Swami was giving darshan in ladies' side, we could not look at Swami because people would misunderstand. And I remember Swami called me once. I met my mother in front of Ganesha statue in the ashram. And then Swami called us for the interview, and he told me, he said, see, people don't know that you're meeting your mother. So don't meet your mother in public. So I'm giving you permission. If you want to meet your mother, go to the room in the ashram, meet your mother, and then go to the ashram. But don't stand in public. So that's how strict he was.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, let me ask you about that band. You are involved in many things, but just a few things I wanted to, take your thoughts. So, band. How did the band happen? You were from your rock band to Bhagavan's band.
that was really very different. I remember the way it happened was this. One evening we were just sitting in the mandir veranda, and then suddenly Swami came out, and he picked up a few of us, and he said, took us in for an interview. We thought an interview, and we sat there, and then he said, "Look, I've decided to create a band. So students band, and I have selected all of you." And then he asked each of us, and he told each of us like what instrument he wanted us to play. So for me, he asked me by saying, "How strong are your lungs? Are your lungs strong?" And I said, "Swami, by your grace, they are strong." And he said, "Okay."
You're fine.
Yeah. Then he said, "Okay, you play the trumpet." So that's how I started playing the trumpet for the band. And then for other people, he gave different. So some people the clarinet, some people the drums, and so on. So he selected for everybody what they should play. So that's how so in that room, I think there were about 12 or 14 of us, and Swami told each of us to play, and that's how we. So there were some instruments that somebody had brought from Chennai, I remember, They were Indian instruments. The kind of instruments that the band has now are very professional and
They
very
are
good, very
beautiful.
high standard. We
Yeah.
got in the beginning we got these instruments which are very different. They were silver in color, not even gold. They're silver colored and given by a devotee. And then Swami had an instructor from the army. So that army guy came and he started teaching us to play the instrument. And he was as frustrated with us as we were with him because we were struggling to learn how to play. And I remember my lips were sore because I was playing the trumpet and there was a cut in my lip. And I told this military instructor, I said, I can't play pains when I play because my lips are swollen and there was a cut. And he told me, he said, put the horn of the trumpet against the door jamb, and then blow. And I actually did it. I actually did. It was much later when Maynard Ferguson came, and then he told us something totally different. He said, when your
Yeah,
lips
he
are
gave us a
swollen,
very
yeah,
beautiful explanation
yeah,
of how to
yeah. And
take
he
care of
told us how to look after ourselves.
your lips.
Yeah. So I mean, that's how Swami things progress. It starts in a small way, and then it grows and grows and grows until it becomes right as good as an international level
Yeah.
band.
Today our band is one of the best, I would say. College band
Yeah,
is beautiful.
yeah. Because
Even
I
our
talked.
alumni band is very nice.
Yes, I talked to the military guys when Ferguson first brought the instrument. And those guys came, they saw the band and they said, wow, even we don't have these kind of instruments that you guys have. So
Okay, let me fast forward now. How did you choose to become the lecturer there? Or was it given to you?
actually, I didn't choose, Swami chose. So in my first year itself, uh, Swami sent Professor Gokak, who was the vice chancellor. So one day Professor Gokak called me and said, I want to talk to you. So he called me to the conference room in the college. I remember that. And he told me, he said, Swami has selected you to become a lecturer. So you have a great responsibility. And you should be aware that, this is what you're going to do in the future and you should prepare for that. So he gave me a big talk about 30, 40 minutes. And so I knew that I was going to join Swami's college as a lecturer right in my first year. So that's how, and of course, when I became a lecturer, that was another story. We had gone to Kodaikanal with Swami, and that's another story. Again, I'll tell you another time. But we were lucky enough, we got selected, we went to Kodaikanal with Swami, and then we returned and we stayed in Bangalore also, for some days with Swami. And ultimately, we had to leave, of course, because the semester began, the academic year began. So I came back to Puttaparthi. My parents were in Puttaparthi, and we took Swami's permission. We came back, and I still remember I was in my room in the ashram with my parents, and I just finished lunch. That was my first day after coming back from Bangalore, and I was, I opened my chatai and I was sitting there and after lunch and I was talking to my mother and my father and I said, don't pester me for applying for a job because for a few months I want to have Swami's darshan nicely without any pressures, without anything. And after that, I look for a job. But give me some time so that I can enjoy Swami's darshan. So I was just talking like that when somebody knocked on the door and it was Sanjay Sani. So and when I opened the door, he was standing there and he said, Vice Chancellor is calling you immediately, come quickly. So I changed my clothes and I went up to Ad Block and another person who had joined who was with us in Kodai. He was also there, Prabal. He was there, Prabal now.
Prabal Mal.
Yeah, he was there. So we both went. We had been called by Vice Chancellor. And the moment we entered Vice Chancellor's room, he said, what are you doing here? And I didn't understand that question. So I looked at him, blankly because I didn't understand what he, and neither did Prabhu. So he looked at him very blankly and he said, you've been appointed as a lecturer in Vrindavan. What are you doing here? So that was news to me. And I said, sir, I didn't know. And he said, what do you mean you didn't know? Immediately take your things and go immediately to Bangalore. Swami was supposed to come back the next day to Puttaparthi. So both of us had to leave in a hurry. So we booked a van, we quickly loaded our things, and rushed to Vrindavan because we had to reach before Swami finished his evening discourse.
Darshan.
The next morning, Swami was going to leave. So we rushed there, and luckily we reached in time. And then we sneaked in from the back door inside Vrindavan, and we stood near the steps when Swami was climbing up to the dining hall. We stood there. And then Swami finished his talk, and he came to the main hall, and he gave all the ladies, their namaskar, and talked to them. And then he came in. When he came in, he saw us standing there, and he said, "Oh, what are you doing here?" He said, "Because we just took permission to go back to Puttaparthi." So he looked at us and said, "What are you doing there? What are you doing here?" And then so I stepped forward and I said, "Swami, Vice Chancellor said that we've been appointed as lecturers in Vrindavan in college, so we came to take your blessings." So then he said, "No, I don't know anything about that." And he looked at us. So when he said that, then in my mind, I just thought to myself, if Swami doesn't know anything about it, then we should go back. So we'll go back, no problem. Then he looked at us and he said, "What do you want?" So both of us immediately said, "Swami, whatever you say, okay, then do. Then do." Then he called warden. The warden gave him a place in the hostel, and he went up to the dining room. So that's how we joined the Vrindavan. We took Swami Namaskar and we joined Vrindavan. And then the next morning, after Swami left, I remember he sent word to another lecturer. He said, "Swami has told you to, you have to stay, sleep in Vrindavan." So that's how I got another opportunity to stay with Swami in Vrindavan. So
That's nice.
how,
So
yeah,
you're also sleeping there in Trei as okay.
yeah.
Some boys are given the duty to be staying there.
Yes, and it was very beautiful because when Swami was not there, it was okay, but when Swami came, it was a very beautiful experience. Swami is there, and you are there.
Another milestone in your life was Bhagavan performing your marriage. Actually, he was identifying. So how did that news come to you?
See, that's
Were you expecting it? Were you?
no, not at all expecting it. We didn't want it, and I think neither me nor my wife, both of us didn't want to get married. So for different reasons, whatever they were, but we didn't want to get married. And to make a long story short, because it took 3 years for Swami to actually get us married. Because he was trying to persuade me to get married, and I was dilly-dallying, I should say. So it started like it was a Sunday, I remember, and I was sitting at the back in Vrindavan. Swami was speaking to the students in front, and suddenly he asked for me. So everybody immediately, where is he? And then I was told to go. So I went running and I went to front and he said, and he started, how Swami does, pulling my leg. He said, "Why don't you get married?" And then everybody laughed. And I said, I just kept quiet. And he said, No, it's time you got married, all that. So he started off. Lot of leg pulling going on at that time. And what do you think? Should we get married? So I looked at him and said, "Sorry, I don't want to get married." And he said, No, you must. The moment you said no, you must get married. So all this was going on, and then he said, "You know that girl's name?" I said, "Swami, how will I know?" And then he said, he took her name. He said, "This is me." And but actually, that was not my wife's name. That was my wife's family deity's name, which Swami had.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh,
And then he told some students who were there, I think Ravi Kumar was there. He told him, he said, "Do you know this bhajan?" So one bhajan which he used to sing, he said, "Do you know this bhajan?" But the words of the bhajan was, "Naino mein premta, vachno mein amrita, Sadguru Sai, mere jeevan ka dhyan." So when he sang that, when Swami sang that line, "Naino mein premta," so everybody laughed because they thought Swami pulling my leg. So everybody laughed. And I just listened. But actually, it was the bhajan which he liked to sing, which Swami made it. Yeah.
oh,
So all
that's so
this we came to
sweet.
know. Yeah. So all this we came to know later. Then after that, I called my parents. I called up my parents on the phone and I said, "This is what Swami said. I don't know, whether he is serious or he's not serious. but this is what he said, so I just want to convey it. So that's how the marriage thing started. But then, and then he talked to my wife's family also. But then after, for 3 years, he was silent. He didn't tell them anything. And then every day, that was an opportunity for me, because every day Swami would, whenever Swami was there in Vrindavan, he would call me. The moment he would see me, he would say, "Oh, marriage, marriage." So every day was like, this was the subject for him to talk to me. And I had the privilege of interacting with Swami because of this. And a lot of things happened because of that. Swami would take that.
Gautam, it's an interesting thing to see that in Avatar's life, he has done so much, and this is one of the things, not only bringing the children to his fold and looking after the whole journey of life, but also taking care of every event, major events of life. So many students he has performed marriages.
Hmm.
So when you look now, when you look back, how do you understand this marriage for you? And when you said you are not interested, neither was she, and you see Avatar arranging it and kind of, you know, playing the Cupid for you both. So how do you understand this marriage?
Actually, I wouldn't say that he played Cupid. I would say that he played his role as parent. When my first interview with Swami was with my mother. So the first day when I attended, the darshan of Swami and sat in the portico as a student, that day he came to me and he talked to me. He asked me where I came from, what is my name, and then he asked me, who is with you, and I said my mother and my brother are there with me, and he said, okay, call them. So I got this opportunity. We got this opportunity to get an interview, which was again very exciting for us. The moment when we entered the interview room, the first thing he told my mother was, "These are not your children. These are my children now, and I will take care of them." So, Swami kept his word throughout, and even now, he's still keeping his word, even though physically he's not there with us. He's still keeping his word. He's really looking after us, and he looked after us in such a. At this point of time, I can tell you, Swami paid my hostel fees. My parents did not pay any money. Swami paid my hostel fees. Swami paid all the money that was to be paid when we studied there, and he gave us even pocket money, to spend. So and then he used to take accounts like how much did you spend, dhobi ka kitna hua, iska kitna hua, all those. So, yeah, so Swami really took care of everything. But which was I can only be grateful, like a thousandfold times grateful. I don't know, because again, that was one of the things was that he took care, and the second thing was because of that we got so many opportunities to be with him, to talk to him, to interact with him, which was so beautiful.
So how would you I know you're talking to you before, and I wanted to just share your thoughts on how has whole life journey with Bhagavan, looking at how it has helped the process of spiritual growth, and how do you look at spirituality from that point of view?
No, like I told you in the beginning, I was not at all religious or spiritual. So I can say that I was introduced and put on the path of spirituality by Bhagavan. So it was only because of him that I started thinking about God. And to be very frank, I had no direction in life before that. I didn't even understand what was going on around me. And I was like, actually a leaf in the wind. Wherever the wind blows, I will go. After coming to Bhagavan, we came to understand so many things. What is the purpose of life, for example, and the meaning of God, and the fact that there is a God. So, and he didn't do it suddenly. It's a process. It takes time, and he being the Sadguru, he kind of he took us along this path step by step, step by step, step by step. Sometimes it was difficult. Sometimes he made it easy, but he made sure that we went down this path, and we became more and more and more, should I say, uh, able to absorb the meaning of things like what is life and what is the purpose of life. These things we never understood before. There was no way. So even now, when I look at the world around me, the fact that I am an observer and I see what is happening around me as an observer without getting involved is something that Swami helped us to develop. And it didn't happen because Swami never said, for example, do you do this thing, this sadhana, that sadhana. He never stopped. Whatever you were doing, he would encourage you to do. He would help you to do in that. And but he never prescribed. He was never prescriptive.
So, what is spirituality for you, if I may ask you like that?
See, you can say spirituality is like many things for me, many things. Number one, be good. Be a good person when you're living in society. That itself is spirituality. If you are a good person itself, you're doing seva to everybody around. You're not troubling anybody. You're not. So, spirituality at a very basic level is that. But at another level, it is also moving from the outside to the inwardness to inside. So outside is not as important as the inside part of it. So moving and becoming aware of yourself, that is another aspect of spirituality. And that came very, 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 should I say, naturally, because the mandir in Puttaparthi for me was like, a mother, the lap of a mother. So whenever I sat in the mandir, I felt extreme peace. And because of that, that helped me to, move inward. And of course, it has been a struggle to control your mind, to focus your mind, which is very important, when you do meditation. So concentration is one of the things that is important, but it is difficult. It's not easy, and it's a constant. What should I say? Constant struggle to do that, to overcome that mind, to focus it. As Patanjali would say, chitta vritti nirodha. So getting that focus itself is very, very difficult. But Swami made it easy, because when you are with Swami, you are thinking of nothing else but Swami. So he made it quite easy. Okay, so moving from something which is external to the world within, to becoming aware. So another aspect of spirituality would mean the human being is made up of panch koshas, as you know. So among these koshas, we live at a very basic level again, to realize that the foundation of everything is the Anandamaya kosha, and then getting in touch with that Anandamaya kosha and being able to experience that Anandamaya kosha. That would be spirituality. So at different there are different definitions of when you talk about spirituality, and Swami has, by keeping us with him, by his own influence, by his own personality. As I said, my life is my message. He has made us move on this path and kind of made it easy and given us an example, an ideal to follow, so that we can also try. And I should not say try. We should also be able to do what we are supposed to.
How do you experience Bhagavan, especially after his physical departure, if I may? How have things changed or evolved, so to say?
Actually, to be very frank, Swami is always with me. So Swami is, I can say very, very confidently, Swami is always with me. I always feel his presence, and even the smallest things, I always feel his presence. So I'll give you a small example. For example, when I joined the college in the first year itself, when we used to finish darshan, me and one of my classmates, we used to walk back together, and we used to talk about Swami. And at that time, when we were walking on the road back to the hostel, we would get this beautiful fragrance, whiff of vibhuti. And we knew that Swami was there. So even at that time, though Swami was there physically, he was also there not physically. You know what I mean? So even at that time, we experienced his what should I say? His true form. So his physical form was there, but he was also there in his godly form. That's what I would say. So it was not always, it was not just Swami in the mandir. Swami was everywhere. And he reminded us constantly about that. And there were small things like we thought about something and he would respond and say, you're thinking like this. Well, it's not like this, it's like this. So we knew he was there all the time with us. And whatever we felt, he would respond. Whatever we said, he would hear. And he would tell us. So you were talking like that? I know. One day he came out of the interview room and Swami had created a pen for a student and he had given it to him in the veranda. So we were sitting in the front row and this student was sitting beside me. So I was sitting in front. I asked this student, I said, can I see the pen? So he gave it to me. I looked at it, I saw it, and I gave it back to him. And he put it in his pocket. That's all. And then Swami was in the interview room. We were quiet, we didn't talk. Swami finished the interview, came straight to me and said, where am I? So I didn't know where you were leading. So I didn't, because I didn't understand the context, so I didn't answer. Of course, the natural thing would be everywhere, but then Swami would say, how do you know? So I just kept quiet. Then he said, Bolo, where am I? So I didn't say anything again. Then he looked at me and said, you think I am in the interview room? So I am everywhere, sir. Not only in the interview room, I am everywhere. Why were you talking? Then I looked at him and said, Swami, I didn't talk because in my mind, according to me, I didn't talk. Then he said, no, you talked to this guy. Then I said, no, Swami, I didn't talk to him. I just asked him, what is your business? I have created the pen for him. What is your business? You mind your own business. Why do you have to talk to him and ask him? And he blasted that guy. He said, I'll take it back. Give me back the pen. I'll take it back. And then he fell at Swami's feet. Swami, I'm sorry. Why did you give it to this guy? So, in these ways, Swami showed us that he is always with us. He always knows what is not only there in the mandir, in the portico, even away from him, even when we were far away from him physically. He knows everything. He knows him. And he gave some fantastic experiences, showing his, what should I say, omnipresence and omnipotence. It's amazing, some of the experiences that he gave us. And that made us realize that Bhagavan is not just the 5'4" that we see in the mandir. He's much more than that. So he created that awareness. And we have to remember that all the time, that he's always there. And he will always be there. For anybody who takes his name.
Certainly. I remember in a conversation, Bhagavan was talking about dharma. Do you recall the definition which he gave?
Oh, yes. This is one thing which I picked up from one of his discourses when he came to Vrindavan, when Kulvantra Hall was being built. So he stayed for a long time, almost like more than 7 months there. So he would give a discourse every evening, and slowly, these discourses became very Advaitic in nature. And then during one of these discourses, Swami gave this beautiful definition, which I kind of caught on and I have held on to, and I always remember. He said, I think that's one of the most beautiful definitions, because I've read a lot of definitions about dharma, but Swami gave it so beautifully and so simply and so easy. He said, dharma means the greatest good of the greatest number. Dharma, that is dharma. The greatest good of the greatest number. So any action.
The greatest good of the greatest number.
That is it. So very simple, very easy to understand. And I immediately latched onto it, and I've always remembered that, and I always keep that definition in mind, which Swami gave us. So any action that leads to that,
The way he summarizes the whole concept in simple words
absolutely,
is mind-boggling.
really, really. I mean, there are so many gems, which are there. If somebody wants to find them, they can. You know, they can do their PhD in spirituality, as I said.
Just by thinking about Swami. Yes, of course.
And the greatest thing is that the memories. You know, when you can relive those memories, that makes everything so much easier.
Beautiful.
Just focusing on
Any
that.
final thoughts, Gautam? Anything, any memory you want to share, or any message, any good memories of Bhagavan you want to share at the closing?
Well, there are so many. There are so many beautiful memories of Bhagwan, and I know that each and everybody, who was there at that time, had their own experience, their own Ramayana, as you say, and their own Bhagavatam. And as Kabir himself said very beautifully, that I can use the whole earth as paper and all of the sea as the ink, but it will not be enough to write your Leelas, Swami's Leelas, and about him. And so, the only thing I can say is that I pray to Swami that he gives all of us the strength to be able to live up to his ideals. And as he once said very beautifully, I don't want all of you to be street dogs. I want you to be street lights. So I pray to Swami that on this auspicious Navratri day, that he blesses everybody so that they can light the world around them, and provides peace, harmony, and succor to all the people who are around them, who are in pain and who are suffering, and so on. So I pray to Swami that he may be able to give us that strength, that and his own divine energy, because without that we can't do this. So that is my prayer.
Thank you, Brother Gautam. Thank you for taking your time out and sharing this beautiful memory and the journey of Bhagavan with all of us. And I really appreciate it. And I thank all of them, all of people who have been online with us and watched this offering. This will be on our channel, and you feel free to share with everybody the love of God. Thank you, Sairam. Thank you, Bhaiya.
Thank you,
Sairam
everybody.
Gautam.
Thank you everybody for
Appreciate it.
patient listening, and thank you again for providing this beautiful opportunity of having satsang with you and with everybody on this beautiful day, Navratri, beginning of Navratri. Thank you so much again, and
Sairam.
pranams to Bhagavan.
Sairam.